Virginia Colony, autumn 1777. The smoke of war hung over the forests like a permanent storm. For weeks, cannon fire had echoed through the valleys, shaking the earth long after each battle had ended. Farms stood abandoned. Homes were reduced to blackened ruins. Every road carried soldiers, widows, or men too wounded to remember their own names. 20-year-old Eleanor Carter stood outside the family cabin, clutching the final letter her older brother had ever written. The edges were worn from being unfolded hundreds of times. "Don't worry about me, Ellie. When this war is over, we'll rebuild everything together." It had been 4 months. No more letters ever came. The Continental Army officially listed Sergeant Samuel Carter as missing in action after a brutal engagement near the Pennsylvania frontier. No body. No witnesses. No answers. The officers told Eleanor to accept reality. Her neighbors said it was time to mourn. Even her grieving mother whispered that Samuel was probably gone. But Eleanor refused to believe it. Every night she dreamed of the same thing. A dark forest, a distant voice calling her name, and someone whispering, "Find me." The dreams became so vivid that she stopped sleeping. Then, one cold October morning, a wounded courier arrived carrying supplies for the nearby militia. As he rested, Eleanor overheard 2 officers speaking in hushed voices. "They never found Carter. I heard a patrol spotted prisoners farther north. If he's alive, he's behind enemy lines." Those words changed everything. That evening, Eleanor walked into the old barn where her father's military belongings had remained untouched since his death years earlier. She picked up his weathered uniform. It was too large, too heavy, too dangerous, yet somehow, it felt like hope. Before sunrise, she cut off her long brown hair with a hunting knife. She wrapped her chest tightly beneath rough linen. Standing before a cracked mirror, she barely recognized herself. The frightened young woman was gone. Looking back at her was someone determined enough to walk into a war. Using the name Edward Carter, she enlisted with a volunteer supply regiment traveling north. No one questioned the quiet young recruit who kept to himself. The army desperately needed every able-bodied soldier. Training was brutal. Marches lasted for miles through mud and freezing rain. Food was scarce. Sleep came only in brief moments beside dying campfires. Every day Eleanor feared someone would discover her secret. Every handshake, every inspection, every shared tent. One mistake could expose everything. But surviving training was only the beginning. 3 weeks later, Captain William Ashford assembled the regiment before dawn. His expression was unusually grim. "We've received intelligence," he announced. A patrol disappeared while carrying documents that cannot fall into British hands. The soldiers exchanged nervous glances. Ashford continued, "Your mission is simple. Enter Black Hollow Forest, recover the dispatch case, and return." A veteran quietly muttered, "Nobody comes back from Black Hollow." The captain heard him. "I know the stories," Ashford replied. "I don't believe in ghost tales. But I do believe in enemy scouts." By sunset, 15 soldiers entered the forest. The towering trees swallowed the last rays of daylight. The air grew strangely silent. No birds, no insects, only the distant creaking of branches. Late that night, while the others slept, Eleanor heard footsteps circling the camp. Slow, measured, watching, she reached for her musket and stepped beyond the firelight. Nothing, only darkness. The following morning, Private Thomas Reed was gone. His blanket remained neatly folded. His rifle leaned against a tree. But the soldier himself had vanished without leaving a single footprint. The captain ordered everyone to spread out and search. Hours passed. No trace. As the sun began to set, Eleanor noticed something carved into the bark of an old oak tree. Fresh, deep, deliberate. One word. Samuel. Her heart nearly stopped. No one else in the regiment knew her brother's name. She slowly reached out, touching the carved letters with trembling fingers. Who had written them? And more importantly, who wanted her to find them? The camp barely slept that night. Every soldier claimed to have heard something moving between the trees. Some blamed British scouts. Others whispered about men who had entered Black Hollow years before and were never seen again. Captain Ashford dismissed the rumors. "Fear is the enemy's greatest weapon," he said. "Stay focused." But Eleanor couldn't stop thinking about the name carved into the tree. Samuel. Someone had written it recently. Someone who knew her brother had been here. At first light, the patrol continued deeper into the forest. Thick fog rolled across the ground, reducing visibility to only a few yards. The silence was unsettling. Even the horses refused to move without constant urging. Around noon, the soldiers discovered the remains of an abandoned battlefield. Broken wagons, rusted muskets, shattered cannon wheels. The battle had clearly ended months earlier, yet the earth still carried the scars of violence. While the others searched for supplies, Eleanor noticed a torn piece of blue military fabric caught beneath a fallen log. She picked it up carefully. Sewn inside the collar were two faded initials. SC. Samuel Carter. Her hands began to shake. He had survived long enough to reach this place. But where had he gone? Suddenly, a gunshot shattered the silence. The patrol scattered for cover as musket fire erupted from the trees. British Rangers. The ambush was swift and deadly. Smoke filled the forest. Bullets splintered tree trunks. Captain Ashford shouted orders over the chaos. "Hold the line." Eleanor fired once. Then again. A British soldier fell behind a boulder. But there were too many attackers. Within minutes, 2 members of the patrol lay wounded. Another had disappeared into the smoke. When the firing finally stopped, the enemy had vanished as quickly as they had appeared, leaving behind only silence and more questions. Among the fallen British equipment, Eleanor found a leather satchel containing several maps. One map showed hidden supply routes. Another marked abandoned forts, but a third map made her blood run cold. A red circle had been drawn around a location deep inside Black Hollow. Beside it were 3 handwritten words. American Prison Camp. Captain Ashford stared at the map in disbelief. "If this is real," he whispered, "our missing soldiers may still be alive." That evening, the patrol changed course. Instead of returning home, they marched toward the mysterious location. The deeper they traveled, the stranger the forest became. Old cabins stood empty. Campfires had burned recently, yet no people remained. Someone was watching them. Eleanor could feel it. Just before midnight, she volunteered for sentry duty. The moonlight barely reached the forest floor. Everything was still. Then, a figure stepped out from behind the trees. Not a British soldier. Not one of their own. An elderly man wearing tattered Continental Army clothing. His beard was gray. His face was thin. His eyes looked haunted. He raised both hands slowly. "Don't shoot," he whispered. Captain Ashford demanded his name. The old man answered with trembling lips. "I escaped." "Escaped from where?" the captain asked. The man pointed into the darkness beyond the trees. "They're keeping our men alive." "For what?" The old soldier lowered his head. "They're forcing them to build something." Before anyone could ask another question, a rifle cracked through the night. The old man collapsed instantly. A single bullet had struck his chest. The patrol rushed for cover. But the shooter had already disappeared. As Eleanor knelt beside the dying survivor, he grabbed her sleeve with surprising strength. With his final breath, he whispered only 4 words. "Trust no one inside." Then his hand fell still. Eleanor looked around at the faces of the exhausted soldiers. For the first time since joining the regiment, she realized the greatest danger might not be hiding in the forest. It might already be marching beside her. The old soldier's warning echoed through Eleanor's mind for the rest of the night. Trust no one inside. Inside what? The camp, the prison, or the patrol itself? Before dawn, Captain Ashford ordered the men forward. Guided by the captured map, they climbed a rocky ridge overlooking a hidden valley. Below them lay a heavily guarded prison camp. Wooden watchtowers rose above high log walls. British flags fluttered in the cold morning wind. Dozens of exhausted American prisoners hauled timber under the watch of armed guards. Eleanor scanned every face. Then she froze. Near the center of the camp, carrying a heavy beam across his shoulders, was a familiar figure. Older, thinner, covered in scars, but unmistakable. Samuel Carter was alive. Tears filled her eyes, but she forced herself to stay silent. Captain Ashford quickly formed a rescue plan. At sunset, part of the patrol would create a diversion at the western gate while the others slipped through the eastern fence to free the prisoners. As darkness fell, the first musket shot shattered the silence. The battle began. Explosions lit the valley. British soldiers rushed toward the western wall. Ashford led Eleanor and several others through a narrow opening behind the camp. They cut the prisoners' chains as quietly as they could. Run, Ashford whispered. Chaos erupted. prisoners scattered into the forest while gunfire echoed from every direction. Eleanor searched desperately until someone grabbed her shoulder. She turned. Samuel stood before her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Samuel recognized the silver locket hanging around her neck, the one their mother had given Eleanor years before. Ellie. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'm taking you home. Samuel smiled weakly. I knew you'd find me. The reunion lasted only seconds. A British officer appeared behind them and fired. Samuel shoved Eleanor aside. The bullet struck his shoulder instead. Ignoring the pain, Samuel tackled the officer, allowing Eleanor to escape. Together they raced toward the forest with the remaining prisoners. Just as freedom seemed within reach, another volley of musket fire erupted. Captain Ashford was hit while covering the retreat. Though badly wounded, he refused to leave his position until every prisoner had crossed the river. Only then did he collapse. By sunrise, the survivors reached American lines. 43 prisoners had been rescued. The secret prison camp was destroyed. The intelligence recovered from the camp exposed hidden British supply routes and helped prevent future attacks in the region. Months later, Samuel slowly recovered from his wounds. Eleanor's remarkable courage eventually became known to military leaders. Although women were rarely recognized for serving in combat. During that era, those who had witnessed her bravery never forgot what she had done. Captain Ashford, before retiring from service, summed it up best. History remembers battles. But sometimes the greatest victories begin with one person who refuses to give up on the people they love. Years later, Eleanor returned to the quiet family farm she had once feared she would never see again. The war had taken friends, homes, and countless lives. But it had not taken hope. Whenever children asked about the old military jacket hanging above her fireplace, Eleanor would simply smile. It belonged to my father, she would say. And it reminded me that courage isn't measured by strength, but by the choice to keep moving forward when fear tells you to stop. The forests of Black Hollow eventually grew silent once more. The prison camp disappeared into history. Its walls rotted away. Its watchtowers collapsed. Nature reclaimed the battlefield. But the story of the young woman who walked into war disguised as a soldier to save her brother lived on. Not as a legend of glory, but as a reminder that love, sacrifice, and courage can shine even in humanity's darkest hours.